Tropical storm warnings in effect for Texas and the Caribbean on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for August 22nd. So an active tropics in the Atlantic predominantly, with Hillary now becoming a bit of a memory, but still traceable, at least part of it, and its massive banding over the northern part of the United States. But we have new systems to watch, Franklin and 9L, which could become a tropical storm as it reaches Texas in the next 24 hours. Day 83 of Atlantic hurricane season. We've also got Tropical Depression Gert, which weakened after briefly snatching the next name, and Emily, which is now remnant low and a 60% area of interest emerging from Cape Verde. Day 99 in the Eastern Pacific, and we've got 3 areas of interest, all with low chances now of forming in the next 7 days, but keep watching all of them. It could develop one of them, if not more. And still ex-Fernanda, still traceable to the south of Hawaii. In the Western Pacific, we've got just the one area of interest still, the 20%, which is now an active system not too far from the Mariana Islands to the east. Could be stalling for a little bit and rather broad, and then will be exerting itself towards the northwest and could develop into a tropical cyclone and affect Japan. North Indian Ocean, relatively quiet, but quite a lot of monsoonal activity there in the eastern part of the Bay of Bengal, and switching round to the northern part of India there into the Himalayas. So lots of rainfall there right now. Let's take a look at Franklin then. Here's its current position. Tropical storm warning still for the entire south coast of Hispaniola pretty much, and tropical storm watch for the northern coast of the Dominican Republic and for the Turks and Caicos Islands. It's 433 kilometers from Isla Sayona, 444 from Santo Domingo, 491 from Punta Cana, 509 from Port-au-Prince in Haiti, and 777 from Coburn Town on the Turks and Caicos Islands. The storm will turn northwards pretty soon and is still being sheared heavily. 9L hasn't been named as of the time of recording. Hopefully it hasn't at the 0Z update by NHC, but it is here right now. Tropical storm warnings for the coast of Texas down to the border with Mexico. 512 kilometers from El Conchial, 546 from Brownsville, 594 from Corpus Christi, 623 from McAllen, and 776 from Nuevo Laredo inland in the interior there. Depression right now could become a brief tropical storm with an expected peak of 45 miles per hour. And here is the latest satellite imagery. First of all, taking a look at TD9 there, and its influence already starting to reach the coast of Texas, which will deliver probably some significant rainfall pretty soon by this point. As we take a look at some of this hybrid imagery, you can see Franklin disappearing into the night there as we switch that imagery and take a look at some of that infrared. Some decent cloud tops blowing up as we zoom out of it and take a look at both of those two systems together. Franklin looking okay. It's still got lots of shear problems, which is quite clear there. Can't really get those cloud tops going. 9L is broad and lopsided and is not going to have a chance really of rapid intensification. Gert there, a tropical depression in Franklin's shadow now and really struggling. Emily even more so, that's why it's a remnant low. I've had to circle it in case you can't find it. And there's Gert, and towards the right hand side there near our logo you can see another disturbance there. That's the one we've given a 60% chance, gradually moving west-northwest. All these storms fighting dry air as well. You can see it all swirling around there. And very interesting dynamics across the Atlantic at the moment with all of these active systems. Looking back at some of the visible imagery there, you can see very nice imagery there of 9L in those late images, and possibly one or two disturbances starting to take shape in the Eastern Pacific down near the bottom of the screen there. Switching briefly to the shortwave infrared. As day turns to night, you can see those cloud tops increasing. That's just a trick of the satellite imagery. It's not actually a sign of intensification. Eastern Pacific sea surface temperatures are still looking good, even after Hillary, plus 30 degrees in some spots. In the Atlantic, very warm, of course, in the Gulf of Mexico, absolute hot spot, although 9L won't take full advantage of that, it looks like. 30 degrees, though, still quite easily. Caribbean also looking good. Franklin will be around 29 degrees Celsius and actually be warmer on the other side as it moves away from the Turks and Caicos Islands. Western Pacific looking good along a long corridor from central Vietnam through the Philippines and then on towards the Mariana Islands. Warm sea surface temperatures up to 26 degrees, extending very far north, almost all the way up to the top of Honshu in Japan, and even a few spots way up there in the interior regions of China along the coast there. Bay of Bengal looking good, 29 degrees in a few spots. Arabian Sea, a little bit of catching up to do. Extremely warm in the Persian Gulf there. And in the southwest Indian Ocean, of course, it's the off season, but actually temperatures rebounding slightly in the channel between Madagascar and northern Mozambique. Australian region, around about the same as it has been for the last few weeks, and it's a similar story over there in the South Pacific. A typical winter pattern currently in play. Sea surface temperature anomalies look like this. The Western Pacific generally building back in towards an above average temperature overall. Eastern Pacific still has that cold area near Hawaii eastwards, but warm is generally overtaking it. In the Atlantic it is above average in most areas. Eastern Gulf of Mexico a particular focus point, and the Eastern Atlantic, those are relative to average there, around 2 to 3 degrees above normal. Where Franklin is, it's about 1 degree above normal, and where 9L is, it's around 1 to 2. Oceanic heat content is still very high in the Caribbean Sea, 1 or 2 little spots near where Franklin is as well. Where 9L is, maybe one small spot there. Eastern Pacific still looking decent off the coast of Mexico, but generally quite lacking in energy. Western Pacific really building up towards much more energy once again near the coast of the Philippines after those recent typhoons dampened things down a bit. GFS model then, there's a lot to watch quickly there. You can see that storm moving into Texas, and then of course you've got Franklin, and Franklin will intensify afterwards, and we've just circled there, that's Emily regenerating briefly, baroclinic forcing probably, that might make it a tropical storm once again as it shifts towards the north. Then we're watching Franklin there, turns abruptly into the coast of Hispaniola and then beyond, and then it could strengthen on the other side of there and into the Eastern Pacific. Then we're taking a look at potentially 1 or 2 systems that might form. Here's one that we've been looking for quite a while, a brief development possible near Nicaragua. The second one in the middle, a system that will be quite broad there and struggle to get itself together, and the one on the left hand side which is even broader still and has the least chance of developing out of the 3 at this time with just 10%. But certainly we could see maybe one of these systems forming. We'll have to wait and see. Western Pacific, watching out for that little disturbance there near the Marianas. It's not so little actually, it's a very broad disturbance, and it really stretched itself out and shape-shifting really, and eventually looks like a storm tries to form out of it. Will it get a proper center of circulation and good structure there and called a tropical cyclone? I'm not sure when looking at that imagery, but I think it's got a decent chance, but 20% right now. Rainfall expectations across the whole Western Atlantic area and into the Eastern Pacific as well. We'll look at all 3 of these potential tropical cyclone impacts, and certainly a lot of rain for 2 of them. 9L will also deliver interesting amounts to southern Texas and the border with Mexico, around about 4 inches maybe. But look at Hispaniola, Dominican Republic, around the coast near landfall, 20 inches possible there, that's 500 millimeters, and not far away from that amount over Costa Rica and Nicaragua from that potential system, or at least a disturbance that may occur there along the coast, and lots of rainfall that could cause flash flooding and landslides. Even higher out to sea, 24 inches, where the storm might stall a little bit, Franklin that is, over the Western Atlantic before turning northwards again. Interesting track and some doubt with its motion. Well, here it is in the longer range. It decidedly turns towards the north by the time we get to day 6 or so and reaches its peak intensity, probably a category 2 hurricane there, starting to recurve, but still will probably deliver tropical storm force winds to Newfoundland according to that model run. That is near the end of the 10-day period, so we really can't be sure about that yet. And also in that period, nothing else across the open Atlantic until the end when Africa spits out a little spinny thing there and it looks like that's a tropical storm near Cape Verde, but that is longer range. Western Pacific, whatever happens with that disturbance moves by Japan, and there may be a second one that might have a little bit of a better shot at things. An extremely broad system again there, and actually, what's it doing there? The GFS model looks like it's going a bit nuts, actually, throwing out loads of little satellite systems there on that run towards the end of it there. So I don't know, but that's the general pattern what we're looking at in the next few days. Certainly the western part of the Westpac looks like it's staying quiet. And we forgot the Eastpac. It's not the order we usually do it in, but here it is. A little system there off the through the Gulf of Tehuantepec. That's probably that middle system, and eventually that western system does develop, but it's after the 5-day mark and maybe after 7 days. And there it is, gradually moving northwards, and it does eventually develop. Too far out to be any kind of certain about that, but it does become a tropical storm and then maybe a hurricane as it gradually moves towards the north and then curves westwards. That's all the serious stuff done for now. You can take a look at the Force 13 merch store and have a look at all our items, including full season and individual storm animations. We also have our Still Waiting for Hone t-shirts, which are not out of fashion just yet. The moment Hone forms, it will be. Silly range then, we're seeing that system near Cape Verde, maybe another little system trying to form there in the Western Atlantic, spinning out of almost nothing there, and yes it does, it goes off there near Bermuda and off towards the north, but it looks like that this current pattern of Atlantic systems is the main sequence for the time being. All we have after that is just this, well, it is an interesting hurricane that develops there, but I reckon it will probably end up recurving, but that is very long range and very difficult to predict what will happen. Of course, that is the early days of September, right in towards the peak of hurricane season. 2 systems in the Eastern Pacific. The first one there, that second one on the right hand side of the two might even still be that middle system we were looking at, its energy, that might end up having a very protracted long track there and becomes a hurricane as well behind that first system. So certainly a lot to talk about in the Eastern Pacific, where we could potentially see 3.5 storms, possibly one of them having 2 lives, or maybe even a different system entirely. Not sure about that. And in the Western Pacific, in the long range, that extremely large system with its satellite storms ends up moving towards the northeast, maybe another one trying to form behind it, and then it's towards the west now, a little disturbance starting to form near Taiwan, and then it eventually gets a very large mass about it. Very sloppy systems really here in the Western Pacific, but it's to be expected this time of year, although it's getting a little bit late on now to be seeing this kind of thing. You generally tend to see much more organized systems as we get into September and October. But there we go, that's that system. Speaking of which, we'll be in that area in September as well. Athens, Singapore, Cebu and Hong Kong on Force 13's Eastern Tour. If you're in the area on these dates, feel free to check in with us, meet and greet, and send us a message on email or through our social media pages. You can also chat to us on Discord, discord.gg/force13 for tropical weather and general weather chat with 3,500 members from around the world. Not long ago on this day, 5 years though albeit, we had a very impressive looking Hurricane Lane, which was peaking at its very top height, category 5 status in the Central Pacific, and everyone was going crazy about that one. Beautiful International Space Station imagery of that storm there. We also had typhoons Sulik and Cimarron in the Western Pacific, which were both potent typhoons. Cimarron eventually moving into Japan, Sulik into northeastern China. And the Atlantic was dead on that day. Back to today then, in the Atlantic, the next name is the dreaded first appearance of Harold. In the Eastern Pacific, the next name is Irwin. And in the Central Pacific, we're still waiting for Hone. Code yellow right now, and that's for Franklin. 42 storms so far in 2023. In the Western Pacific, the next name is Saola. And in the North Indian Ocean, it is still Tej. So we've not had any new formations over in that eastern hemisphere for a little while now. Moving to the southern hemisphere, of course, still off season. Next name in the Australian region is Jasper. Southwest Indian Ocean will start with Alvaro, and the South Pacific it will be Lola. That's all from tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow night.